Do you love the idea of personal growth but find the practice of it exhausting?
We get it.
We're Brandon and Megan Giggling, growth coaches with a mission to put the personal back in personal growth.
If you want a new way of growing into the next version of you without the frustration, guilt, and overwhelm, you're in the right place.
It's time to rethink your growth journey and make it into something that works for you.
You in?
Welcome to Growth Reframed.
Hi guys, welcome to the first episode of Growth Reframed in 2023. It's crazy that we're already to 2023 and yet here we are. So we thought today we would go ahead and start out the year in the right way and just talk about who you want to be this year. Let's dissect that. Let's open that up because I think that if there's any way to start a year, it's starting it out on the right foot and figuring out exactly who and what you want to be in this year ahead.
Yeah, that's right. 2023, a new year. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure that people are feeling. There's a lot of expectations. There's a lot of resolutions being made. I feel like in a lot of ways, we speak to a lot of these points each year, but they never really get old. I mean, there's a lot of things that when you're looking at your year, when you're forecasting out, when you're having a vision, when you're trying to figure out what's best for you, your family, your business, regardless of any of that, you really do have to start to think about it. And your point of just asking of who do you want to be? And I don't know about y'all, but that's a difficult question to answer. It wasn't that long ago where I had gone to a conference, the Vault conference with Patrick Bet-David, where he started out the conference saying, who do you want to be? And I looked at the people around me and all of us were kind of like, what? Like, what does that even mean? Like, what does that even mean? But it's like, really, who do you want to be? What do you want to be doing? And I preface a lot of the reflection on that on the fact that you have to be clear on it because we're in a place right now where last year, we didn't really know. We kind of started out the year with a Setting Intentions episode, and I'm going to just be real transparent with y'all. We didn't really step up in the ways we were hoping to, and that's okay. So if you're in a place right now where you think it's getting to the middle of the month, you haven't done anything yet, that's okay. We've been guilty of that too. I want this episode to come at no judgment if things haven't gone the way you'd hoped. Sometimes the world has a way of showing you and life has a way of showing you what you actually need. For me, I know in 2022, I had a lot of major goals in the beginning of the year, and then I realized what I really needed to do was look in the mirror and reflect on myself. So I spent a lot of time, going to therapy. I spent a lot of time caring for myself, taking time for myself, having self-care. Me and Meg communicating a lot on what each other needed, and we really, if I had to put a word to it, it was like the year of self-love for us.
Absolutely. And I think it was even reflected on this podcast too, because suddenly we were less than weekly and then we were a little bit less than weekly. And it just kind of became like this back burner situation. And part of me wants to be like, well, that's just a failure of us and a reflection of how terrible of a year we had. And that's just not true at all. What that really means is for most of 2022, our priority had to shift. Like we had to choose Brandon's we had to choose your self-care. We had to choose my mental stability. We had to choose both of us. And in the way that came out was a little bit less podcasting and a little bit less growth reframing and a little bit more just relaxation and rest and reflection. Oh, all R's. I like that.
Oh yes. Rest. What was it? Rest, reflection, and relaxation. But yeah, I mean, you're right. And that's why I say be getting clear on what you actually want. And I started out this episode by talking about the pressures that people put on you, the expectations people put on you, the places that people think you should be. And if you've listened to us a time or two, I hate the word should. Should means someone else is speaking into your life. So what do you want? And ultimately, if you say, well, Brandon, I want this. I want to grow my business this much. I want to step into doing a podcast myself. I want to be clear on my personal growth journey or get right with my kids or get right with this family member. The question I always come back to is, does my will match my want? Does me wanting it, is that enough? Because, if you don't have the willpower to do it or any willpower to do it, then is your want strong enough too? Because that's the thing. Like, if you want to throw out a big, hairy, audacious goal, and that's one of these wonderful personal growth words that everyone seems to be throwing out as of late, if you want to do that to keep up with the Joneses, or do that because you think it needs to be this big, ridiculous goal, but you don't actually feel it in your own heart, what do you think the likelihood is that you're going to make it there? It's very slim. And again, it's from a place of no judgment, but you don't have to put that out there if that's not what you want. So you need to identify for you what it is that is important to you this year and beyond. And for us, one of our core values is always family. So regardless of how much energy and commitment and things we put into this podcast and into our business, that can't go away either. So does the things that you're setting out to do this year, do they match who you want to be? And do they match your core values of what you're trying to do? I mean, these are big questions, y'all, and we're hitting you over the head with them in the beginning of the year, mostly just so that you're getting clear with yourself about what you want. And then once you're clear with yourself, it's really cool, because once you start to think about it and kind of let the hamster run on the wheel a little bit, you realize more of what you want and need. Then you can go to your partner, your friends, your family, whoever you're working with, and you can let them know that you've gotten clear on where you want to be, and you can challenge them to get clear on what they want. Because without a plan, the likelihood of it actually happening is about zero. And no one here is a mind reader. So the people around you might see that you're changing, might see what you're trying to do, but if you don't share that, then they have no clue or context for what you're trying to be.
And by the way, it's totally okay if it takes you longer than 3.5 seconds to figure it out. You may have noticed that by the time you're listening to this, it's halfway through January. And the reason for that is because we've been having these conversations. We did not have them in December. We're a little bit late to the party too. And again, that's fine, because I would rather at least, have the clarity, have the ability to have those conversations, find the space and the time to do that, than try to just rush out whatever random things come to my brain and focus on that when it's not really truly what I want and need. So just allow yourself that time and space to figure that out. Even if it means you're not totally clear until February, who cares? At least you're clear, like, at all. If you do what so many people do, is you avoid it altogether, or you just rush into some random thought that you had one time on December 31st, call it your resolution, call it your goal, and then have nothing to back that up. And so it just falls away. And so for us, that has been looking like a few weeks extra to reflect on that, a few weeks extra to think of maybe possibly coming up with the word of the year, a few weeks extra to have conversations that don't necessarily sound like fun, but are super necessary for us in our relationship and our business, for this podcast, all of these different facets of our lives. And I think you should be thinking that way too. You don't have to, but you will feel so much more clarity. You will feel ready to take on what you're trying to do when you have a plan and a path in place. And that only comes from these conversations. It only comes from this self-reflection. It only comes from these deep, hard questions. And it all really starts with the why. You can't do these things unless you're very, very clear on what your why is, what the deep yearnings of your soul are, what really truly matters to you. And it's all the same thing. Whether you call it a why or a value, whatever you want to call it is fine. But you have to know those, because otherwise you're just going to go all over the place and it's not going to matter to you. So with all of that, we've been really focusing on what could our word of the year be? And for us, we think that word is commitment. Now, we're not 100% sold on that word right now. We're pretty sure that's going to be the word. We'll let you know if it changes. But commitment to us, because of the way 2022 played out, because we want to be back on track, because commitment can mean so many things for us. It can mean our commitment to each other. It can mean our commitment to showing up better. It can mean our commitment to doing more with what we have, more with our time, more with our energy, more with our resources. There's so many different ways to phrase that, but if every single decision we make comes back to, does this show commitment, then we'll always be making the right moves. We'll always be going down the right path. And if we don't, we'll know really quickly that we're not, because it won't align with that word, with that value.
Yeah, and you were real honest about the fact that you have to be clear, which is why you need to take the time. And I'm glad you brought up time, because when I think about it for me, and I get these ideas in my head and I think, yeah, that would be amazing. Yes, I want to do that. Yes, let's go ahead. Let's go forward. And this happens to all of us, y'all. The beginning of the year otherwise. Something new gets introduced, something new you decide you want to change. And we've said before, you can change it like that. You can change it at the snap of a finger. But then you have to understand, okay, what does that mean for me though? Because you can say those words, but then what does it mean? When you're talking about time, do you have the time to make that happen? Not even in a negative way, but where is it? You're going to have to plan that out. You can't just say the words and then expect it to come up. For us, we have kids, we have a job, we have a podcast, we have other things we're trying to do. Where is that going to fit into our schedule? Where is that going to take us? And where are we going to all of a sudden find the time to do that? Without planning, it doesn't happen. And no one likes to talk about those things because it's not sexy. You want to talk about the big, crazy thing you're going to do. But if you don't have the time to do it, then how are you going to do it? And also, what will you need to change to make that happen? What skills do you need in your tool belt to make that happen? And how are you going to find the time to get those skills? And do you have the resources to go find someone else who can help you with those skills? Or do you need to learn it yourself? Or do you need to look at some conferences this year in management, or working with other people, or getting clear about your own personal growth journey, or whatever it is for you? Are you going to commit the time to do that? Are you going to commit the time to read the books you need to read to get to the place that you want to be? We've all heard it before, but what got you here isn't going to get you there. If you're setting out, if you're a person like me who wants to set out big goals and set things out there that you want to do, then you have to understand that in order to reach higher, you can't continue to do what you're already doing. We're going on 4 years of podcasting. What we did 4 years ago at the start, we can't continue to do now, because that's not going to get us any further than where we already are. And if we want to take it further, and we want to impact, and we want to reach more people, and we want to do all of those things, then we're going to have to get some more tools to be able to allow that to happen, and find time and planning on our calendar to make that happen. And maybe that's not where you're at. I don't know what it is for you, which is why Meg said, come back to a word for you. To be honest, we're trying to come up with a word for our business, and we're trying to come up with a separate word for us personally. And we haven't landed yet on either. But if you never ask the question, you're never going to land on it. So we're trying to ask the question now to land on it. And like Meg said, we think it's commitment. But I'm telling y'all, I can't say commitment because I want to feel like a hypocrite to you. And I'll feel that way if I'm not living by it. In 2022, I didn't live by it. I don't even remember what my word of the year was, but I didn't live by it because I didn't take the time to understand the gravity of what that means. Which is why I don't want to say I'm going to be committed this year if I'm not all in. Because for me, I was very clear in 2022 about being good with me, about being good to care for myself, to understand that my time was important, that I was a person of value and worth, that I had something to offer, and that I needed to understand it for me. Because everyone else could have told me that, and I didn't know that. So my fear is, by saying my word's commitment, it's just an honest conversation, y'all. To say that my word's commitment, I have to understand that during that time, I still need to prioritize myself. I still need to have self-care in there, worked in, or I'll be right back where I was before I ever started therapy and before I ever started the journey that I'm currently on. And we're all creatures of patterns, and I'm not going back because I've identified what it is. So you have to figure out for you, what's going to direct you? What's going to be your North Star? That's essentially what the word of the year works out to. What is going to be your North Star for this year? For us, it's important. It's important to take the time. And maybe you'll find the time that, maybe you'll say that for you, it's relaxation this year. And so you're not too worried about it. And that's cool. That's fine. It's completely up to you for what you want. But at the end of the day, whatever it is, are you willing to see it through? Are you willing to see it through past just saying it on day one? Because there's going to come a day where it's not going to go according to plan. Today, me and Megan were like, yep, this is going to be the first podcast of the year. And guess what? One of our microphones didn't work. One of our websites got hacked. All these different things came into play. And we had to make a decision. And that decision was, do we just not do it and not stand by what we think we want our word of the year to be? Or do we do it anyway, be committed like we say we wanted to be, and record? So we're legit going old school, which is funny, like we did back in the day when we first started podcasting, y'all. It wasn't so pretty. It was literally us sitting at our kitchen table handing a microphone back and forth. So if you think it has to be some major production to do any of the things you're trying to do, understand that just because Joe Blow on YouTube does it that way doesn't mean you do. Everyone's got to start somewhere. All of them did, and you have to too. But you just got to get clear on what you want and make it count. If you're gonna do it right. Sorry, Meg, that was a long-winded answer, but I had some things on my heart. For me, one of the reflections I've made is just I don't want to continue to go through the motions. I don't want to feel like I'm just surviving. I want to thrive. And in order to thrive, I have to commit to things, which means I got to let some things go.
And I'll be right there to support you when you're doing all of that. And we'll be there to support all of you. We love you guys. We hope you have a great start to your year, and we will see you next week. Thanks for listening to Growth Reframed. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe and leave us a review. We would love to connect with you, so shoot us a DM on Instagram @Growth Reframed. We love y'all.